today we are going to talk about brow mapping. So with our client today, we are looking at her brows. We are seeing she has a really nice shape that she likes to stay within. Is this just makeup or is this actually permanent makeup that you have, like a powder brow?
It's makeup.
Makeup?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like the look of your brows now, the shape that you have?
I do, yes.
You do?
But I
Perfect.
feel like it could be uneven, so
Okay.
I trust you in your judgment.
Thank you. So that's one of the first things you want to ask your client when you're starting to work on them. You want to ask if they're happy with the current shape of their brows, because this is going to be a good starting point to determine what you should be doing. The consultation is probably one of the most important things when it comes to working on your clients, because you want your client to leave happy and you want to make sure that they're trusting your judgment as you're going along. So with that being said, she is happy with the shape of her brows. She likes the thickness of them. She's just looking to make sure that they're more symmetrical. So with that being said, we're going to start with brow mapping with a string today. So the string that we're using is the Stoneheart string, and it has some black liner on it to help us be able to determine how we're going to be able to see where our lines of demarcation are going to be. So the first thing I do is I start with the center of the nose and the brow itself. So I'm coming out, I'm just looking for that very center. So I'm kind of lining it up where the Cupid's bow is, where that tip is, placing it ever so gently and trying to keep a very straight line. So then I'm just moving the string slightly back and forth, and this gets tricky because this happens. So you just kind of line it back up where it was and press down to kind of keep that shape. And you can kind of see where the little mark is. So you can go back in and just get as close as possible as you can. This is probably one of the hardest lines that you have to make. And you can see that there is a slight line there. Your client might be a little bit worried because they're gonna have all these lines on their face. It's completely fine, they will wash right off. So the next thing that I do is I like to do my 3 points of the eye. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking to see where her nostrils are and the center of her brow. And that's gonna be the first line that I go into, starting with those 3 points. So I'm lining up with her nostril, and I'm looking to come as straight as possible. So as you can see, this is where her line of her brow, the beginning of it, should be starting. She comes out slightly, but that's okay. I think it gives her a nice shape to come out slightly. So I'm just gonna go back and forth slightly to get that line, come back over to the side and do the same thing. I'm gonna move down a little bit over here. And as you can see, this brow on her right-hand side actually comes out a little bit more. So you can see that this one actually lines up a little bit better. This one comes out slightly more on the left-hand side from where our line of demarcation was, which is right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just gonna grab a little bit more string. So the next line I'm going to do is going to be where the corner of her eyebrow is. So I'm going to line up the nostril once again. And I'm coming out to where the corner of her brow is out here, but I'm matching it up with the corner of her lash. So I'm gonna come out, come straight as possible, and just slight line. We're just gonna come over here and just make that line a little bit more darker. And then we're gonna come back to this other side and do the same thing. So now we're gonna line up corner of her lash as close as possible, lines up perfect with the end of her brow. Okay, so now the last point that we want to get is where her iris is going to be. So for this, we're going to have our client open her eyes and look straight up to the ceiling. So what you're going to do is you're going to find their iris. How you're going to measure this is, once again, that center of their nostril, or the end of their nostril. Find where that center of their iris is. They're gonna feel a little bit weird because they're gonna have this string right above their eye, but then you're going to just lift it slightly. Okay, and the these lines don't have to be so dark where it's overwhelming for you or your client. It's just enough for you to see it because they are going to be able to erase it after the fact. This is just your guide, and we're also going to outline in white. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to basically match up these points that we've made. So with that being said, I'm going to start here and I'm going to line up our arches. So I'm just placing down, meeting our arch, and I'm just making that line of demarcation. And now I'm going to basically do the same thing with the bottom of her brows here. And I'm going to line them up with the ends of our corners that we have looked at for the tail end of the brow. So essentially, we want to make that line go across. Now that we have that there, we're looking at our brow, we're seeing we get in a little bit more of a shape. So now we're gonna take our corner of our arch here, and we're gonna match it up with this beginning line here that we have to basically make a nice line completely straight diagonally. And the same thing here, match this up with that center. And you can see it's slightly overlapping, so we're gonna let it overlap, that way we know how we're gonna outline this. You can straighten it out just slightly, match that. Now, when we're looking here, we want to do our tail end. So we just want to match up from our corner, once again, of our arch down to that corner of the brow where we were. Make a line. And same thing here, the corner of the brow down to the end of the tail of where our arch was at the top, down to the tail. Okay. So now that we're seeing what's going on here, we kind of want to match it up again, once again, with this corner. So where the arch is, but it's below the eye. So now we're matching this up, and we're meeting the tail end of the brow over here and the front end of the brow here. So and these lines don't have to be so angled as you're working within your client. It really just depends on how I guess dramatic they would like their brow to be. So when we outline this, this is our rough guide to be able to work within, and we're going to outline it a little bit better to give her more of a natural shape and not so much of an angular shape. So once again, here's our line. So now what I like to do is change out the gloves so that we're not getting any more lines of demarcation anywhere else. So this is when we bring out the white pencil, or if you choose to use a different color, you can. I personally like the white. I think the white makes it a lot easier to see, especially once we've had all these lines of demarcation in here. So what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of alcohol, take my 4x4, 2x2, whatever you may have, spray, and kind of just wipe around it to almost sharpen the point a little bit. So our ruler actually comes off. We can place it right in the center. Place it flat down. And now we're just looking at the measurements and just making sure everything is even. So we have our point here, point here, point here. Okay, so now we're looking on this side over here. So where we have our point at the corner, at the edge, it's right at that C line on the outer end. So we're looking at the C over here, and it's not quite there, but we're going to give her a little bit more of a tail there. And then we're going to look and see where we have our arch. So our arch here for our client is going to be our B5, and there's our 4, and it's right before that 4.5, 5 mark. So 4.5, 5. It's going to be right here. And like I said, we can always come back in and just kind of round it out a little bit. We don't want to give them a shocked look. So here we're about right where that pencil marking is, right where that pencil marking is. So we can see that here. So I'm going to remove this now. So first I'm going to come in this way and I'm going to just lift slightly. I don't want to lift too much because we want our client to be as even as possible. And when you're using this white pencil, you're staying inside the white pencil, so you're not going on the outside. You want to get as close as you can without having to get too close where it's taking off the white marking. And at this point, this is when I like to even come in and I like to grab a wax stick, take my 4x4, wrap it slightly so I can have a crisp edge to it, dip it in water or a cleanser, whatever it is you might be using. Try to get it so it's not sopping wet, and then come in and crisp up these little white lines a little bit more, just so I can make sure that I'm trying to stay within that shape that I wanted. And I would say that this is the shape that we are going to go with.